Okay, we're good. So I don't know what's going on there. But
Technology.
yeah, difficult check. Oh, well, obviously, thanks for coming in again. It's been a while since we spoke. I wanted to have a little bit look back at the pre-season and how all the build-up's gone, but a bit specifically about how the side has changed over that summer period, just to open up.
Yeah. So I guess when did we finish? Siam. So not too long ago, but so the team had about 6 weeks off. You don't get a huge amount done in that time, except for a few holidays. But yeah, we had six. Did I say six? I said 6 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had 6 weeks off, and then we got back into it, and last season, just to kind of put it to conclusion, I guess, was, if you remember, we were talking in December in here, and I don't think we'd had a lot of wins on the board, and I said we could start to feel things turning for us. And if you look at the second part of the season, second half of the season, I should say, I think we had 12 games and won 8, including the Siam. So, things really did turn a corner for us, which was great. And, we were still, on reflection, we were still really disappointed to come 10th. We feel we're a side that has a lot more to offer than that. And, this isn't an ego thing. This is, us sitting around that 10th, 9th and 10th again. We kind of felt over the summer that, there's different ways to measure success, and one of those is results based, and we're a results based sports team. You have to be. So for us, it was like, well, what can we achieve moving into this season? So during that 6 week break for the players, we had to go out and start rethinking everything that we were doing. Although, like I said, you could turn around and say those 3 years were successful because no one really gave us a chance to fight in National 2 and stay up there. We had to go and think outside the box and look at ways that we can improve. And whether that's moving to 9th, 10th, 8th, 7th or into the top 6, we have to do things differently than other clubs. So we had a good thought process about what we're going to do, and we started implementing some of that over the pre-season, which has been good. And leading up into the pre-season games, we had 2 really good hit-outs, and one against Rotherham, who's going to, evidently with their win against Roslyn Park on the weekend, are going to be a top side this season in National 1. So we took a lot of courage out of that and a lot of faith in what we were doing. So I feel we're in a pretty good position heading into the season.
Can you go into some of the specifics of what you've been looking at then?
Yeah, I mean, so we had to look at what was working for us and what we wanted. So it was almost like doing a bit of spring cleaning, I guess. What can you still fit in, and what do we need to buy in, and I mean by buy in. Not physical money, but get everyone to buy in different collaborations and around that. So we did a lot of work on our set piece over the back end of last year into this season. But there was things like defensive structures we had improved, but we decided to change our attack structures. Although not a huge change, we have changed that. We've actually changed what we do in training sessions now. So most teams will train for about 2 hours. We train for around an hour and a half, probably the last 8-9 years. And now what we've looked at to do is get all our training done in an hour. So we do an hour on a Tuesday and an hour on a Thursday. And the concept, and we don't know if it's going to work yet, but the concept is, well, I guess our theory is that it's about quality over quantity. So if we can get them working intensely for 10 to 15 minutes on certain things, we can build what you call that game awareness, that game muscle memory. And at the moment, we probably never trained the way that we needed to play, because to do that, you need 2 teams physically bashing each other on a Tuesday, and you just can't do that. So we've tried to look outside the box of ways that we can try and improve. And so far, fingers crossed, that's been to good effect with us, which has been great. And so just taking things out. So I guess for us, it's about taking bigger risks. So the proof's in the pudding with other teams where, they'll train an hour and a half or 2 hours and they're still successful. But with the makeshift of our squad, the finances that we don't have behind us, we have to try to think outside the box a little bit. So, like I said, it could be seen as a pretty big risk, but we also felt that, being 10th, 9th and 10th in the league in the last 3 years, if there isn't any improvement in what we do, then there's no point in what we're doing. If we come 10th again this year, we'd be pretty upset with ourselves. But at least if we come 10th doing what we're doing with change, then we can go, right, well, that didn't work. We can move on to something else.
And I guess some of that is about keeping the players on their toes and keeping it fresh for the players and keeping them interested as well.
Yeah, and you got to remember, you could talk about, the Tom Seelums. I think I've been coaching for about 15, 16 years. But any of the players that come through, you got to remember, even if they come through these junior sections or academies or whatever, they probably started playing rugby when they were 10. So these guys are now 26, 27, okay? So they've been playing rugby for 16 years. So it does become that monotone of delirium, It's just, you've got to change it up for them. You've got to make it interesting for them, and you've got to make it challenging. And I think the hardest thing for coaches is to understand how a player thinks. So back when I trained, we used to love doing the 2-hour training sessions. And if it was short, we used to do extras. We always kind of did that. That was that real big work ethic. But the difference of coming through now is understanding the new player that's coming through. And evidently the new players that are coming through, and I'm talking probably, even probably from 5-6 years ago, these professional players that are coming through, their mind works differently to ours. Ours was that way because that's the way it was done. And now, sports science has now suddenly started changing. So these guys are coming out of university and they're seeing new things. So for them, it's like the shiny ball or whatever for the cat. They see that and go, does that work for them? And our job as coaches is we have to formulate that to try and suit everyone, which it doesn't. So some guys will like to go longer, some guys are training, some guys like to go, short and explosive, things like that. So we've got to work out what formulates for them. And that's the hardest process. And I think we started doing a lot of that. We tend to do reviews constantly, but I think we started really challenging ourselves around that around November time last season. And then we started just bringing things in for the playing group and seeing what worked, seeing what didn't. And once again, I got told straight away, not from within our group, of someone observing that, it's too big a risk. You don't change things in the season. And yet my philosophy is you constantly change things in the season because things constantly change. You know what I mean? Like anything can be different. You could get a late bus to a game. That's a change. That messes up, what you're doing, or a player may get injured or something can happen. And change is good. It's just how you embrace it. So for us, it was about constantly bringing in that change to see if we can cause an effect.
And does some of that come down to sort of injury prevention and managing the players as well with a small squad that you've got? You can't just pull on the resources that a bigger club might.
Yeah, it's difficult, and I think the hardest stress that you have to deal with doing that is it would be easy just to select 15 guys and go, that's it, you just played, that's it, but it doesn't work like that. I was trying to get the words out without saying something obscene, but you've got to have real courage to kind of turn around and make that selection and just going, you know what, I'm resting you this week. I'm pulling you out. We're going to play this guy and we're going to back ourselves. We're going to back this player to come in and do the job. And I think in turn what that does, regardless if you get the win or not, I think what that does, it starts building a culture around of that next man up. We've got to put trust on the wider group. And I think last season, I don't know the exact numbers, but we definitely would have used up into the 40s, of our squad. And if you look at post-Christmas, I think we're around that 34 mark. So we reduced it right down. But because we rotated them and did it with a little bit of planning behind it, we're able to sustain that all the way through to Siam.
So is there a sense of frustration that you come out the back end of that season on a roll and certainly with Asylum as well, and then you're into a break.
Yeah, it's no, not really.
You just need a break.
Because you got to remember, I mean, coaching's different for everyone, but I was at a 30th birthday after the game, and one of the boys to me, Dom Rice, said to me, I said, I'm pretty tired, I might go home. And he goes, what are you going to do when you go home? Watch the footage? And I was like, yeah. So there's a different contrast that goes through with coaches, and every coach is really different. But for me, I'm constantly thinking about it. And when there's probably not many moments in the day where I'm not, brainstorming or thinking outside the box or talking to, our player and trying to get their better understanding of things going. So when you get to the back end of the season, you've got to remember that was the season. So we started well, and then we had a real down point. And to get the team out of that chaotic state, and I call it chaotic because, you got guys that every player's at a different level, so mentally. So some are like, oh, I'm sick of this, and some guys are, actually I'm trying, and no one's wrong. And that chaotic state, you've got to then try and mould it, and it takes weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks to try and mould into a plan where you can go, right, we're back on track. I would probably say the hardest part of that season was actually just before Christmas. We lost to Seven Oaks away, and I turned around and said that was the turning point. I could feel it. You could feel the energy in the group. I said that was the end point, and I hated the fact that we had 3 weeks off, because I was like, well, how are we going to come back from that? And then fortunately we had that TJ's game at home, a massive game, and we won at the death. But we had to do it really against the terms that we weren't really comfortable with, and I think that kind of bound us in. So when we went on the winning streaks and started winning post Christmas, by the time we got to the end, you've got to remember that's your challenge done. You've got to finish then. So for players, they mentally switch off. They get their 6 weeks, and I think most players probably mentally switch off for 3 months. But when they come back for pre-season, and for the coaching side of it, is as soon as you finish that SIAM, I rested on the Sunday, and then on the Monday, I'd already started my planning for what was to come. So you don't stop. It's just that cycle. But you've got to take learnings from the season before, but you've got to shut the door on it as well and say, well, that was then, this is now. Because if you turn around and say, we're on a great winning streak last year, and then you're not playing for another 4 months, it's a dangerous ground to be on. You know what I mean? It's landmines everywhere. So you'll end up in a pretty sorry state.
We've got a couple of new faces come in. How have they all settled in, and what were you looking for when you were bringing the players in? Yeah,
so we generally look at who we're going to be losing, and that's the biggest front, because we've got to try and swap. You would like to do like for like, but every personality and every player is different, so you just do the best you can. So we lost Jamie Dunn. He was with us for the season. He's now signed for a team in National 1. So it's great as well to see that we're developing guys to move forward, which is fantastic. So Jamie Dunn moved on. We brought in Nesta and Martinez Martinez is playing in Barnstable. Have you ever heard of that? It's out in Cornwall area. So he played us a few seasons ago, Barnstable versus Raiders, and he was a 19-year-old then. We liked what we saw then, so we've been waiting for a few years for him to develop, but also finish his apprenticeship. So he's joined us this season, which has been great. Nesta was in Ireland and has come across. One of our bigger signings this season was Josh Pullett. So he was playing with Nottingham in the championship for the last, I want to say 10 years, but I think it's 11 seasons. So he came in at the back end of last season, helped us formulate what we're doing now, set piece wise, and he's playing this season. But he's been a massive contributor to what we're doing there. We've actually got this might be a little bit on the nose for the Jersey boys, but we've got one of their guys has moved to the island, Brian. Quality player. He's played for us for a couple of times now, and big tackler, big back rower. So he'll be handy for us. And then two other players we have in the back line. We've got Jack Colburn, who played both pre-seasons, hasn't featured yet in the league game, but we've only had one. And the other one is Jonathan Dawes. So Jonathan is an interesting character. He was playing for Worthing last time, I think the first season that we're in National 2, and he was a hell of a player then against us. We came really close to winning a game away, which would have probably saved our season, and he managed to make it very, very tough for us. I think they scored 3 tries in the last 10 minutes, and he had his hand on all of them. So he's been, after playing for them, he's been playing on the HSBC International 7 circuit. So and now we've kept in contact, and he joined us this season. Will be playing in the centres. So we have been able to create a little bit more depth in our squad, which has been great. But unfortunately, we've also had 2 injuries early doors. We lost Tom Teasdale to a ruptured ACL against the Rotherham game, and Dale Rutledge broke his collarbone in Jersey 2 weeks ago, so playing. So that hasn't helped, but rugby, you get the injuries, and hopefully we can get Dale back soon, but Tom will be out for the entire season.
And you mentioned the first league game, which we had on Saturday. What are your reflections on that?
Yeah, it was a funny one. So I think I mentioned before that, as coaches, you get a general feel for the energy or for the mood, I like to call it, within the group. And our mood heading into Bracknell, because we had 11 starters out for Bracknell. We say starters, but I'm talking about your big hitters. And we had 11 guys out for that one. And we played a Bracknell side who was a level below us, but I think they finished 4th in the league. So for us, it was probably going to be a pretty tight contest. And the way we prepped that week, the way we went into the game, and I think it ended up being 50 points to 22. We blew them off the park. And the thing that was interesting about that game, I think we used 24 players, and in previous seasons, when you start bringing in the 23s, the 24s, the 25s, you'll probably find a big gap and big energy, and it starts to slow down. In that game, if anything, we just continued to rise and keep on going. And the 2 weeks off, you could feel this energy around Rotherham. Our first big test. These guys are the big hitters. They put 50 points on us last year. But the energy was, it was, if you could bottle it up, you could sell it, and just that feeling in the first 5 minutes in the game, I think, I wouldn't say 5 minutes, but 10 minutes, we were down 2 tries. And everyone was like, you could look around, the crowd's head was like, oh no. But within the playing group, from the bench and that, everyone was still pretty high, on a high. And it was just getting back into our straps. And look, I don't want to speak out of turn, but multiple people would tell you that, there was a chance that we could have won that game. We had a penalty try. They only had yellow cards out for a minute in the game. We allowed them to go back on because it was a pre-season. And the respect that we got from the opposition post that game, and I think that was the difference. And we used 26 players, and by the time we got into the 23rd, 24th, 25th, if anything, we were continuing to still peak by the 80th minute, which was unreal to see. And I think that's, if you look at the Worthing game that we had on the weekend, we went into that one, with a relatively strong squad, and 20, I think it was about 25 minutes into the game, we got the red card. So if anyone knows anything about rugby, I mean, if you get a red card, even with 20 minutes to go in a tight game, you're probably going to lose that game. The chances are it is very, very difficult to win a game with a red card. So we still had to compete for 55 minutes of that contest or whatever it was. And not only, we had a little bit of panic stations for 15 minutes, but after that, as soon as we got to half-time, we came out and we just started dominating certain parts of the game. Now, a game like that last season, we lose it. There is no chance we are mentally strong enough to win that game. Off the back of this one, we didn't just win the game, but we felt comfortable in doing it as well. Like, we felt comfortable in the fact that we were down a man, but we could still defend it out. And our stats in the game should prove that. So, it's very difficult to get plus 90% tackle completion. We were 90.5 with a man down for most of it. we only missed 8 tackles for the game. So off the back of that, there's that comfort in being uncomfortable on the park and saying, actually, you know what, we had enough yellow cards last year. We should have got used to it by now. But it was interesting to see the dynamic of the team at the moment. And for me, you can just see these little parts of where we're developing, but learning and growing as a unit. That's coaches and players alike.
And what are your thoughts ahead of Saturday as well, back at home again?
Yeah, it's funny. I was saying to someone the other day, I think we had our last league game at home, Siam at home, these 2 pre-seasons at home, and then these 2 league games. So we're playing 6 on the trot, which is quite interesting. But it's always comfortable to play at home for sure. We're against a side that's probably, not probably, they're going to be better than Worthing. Look, if you're down to 14 men, like if it was roles reversed, that we would have polled on the tries, and we know that will be coming. So the big area for us is around discipline. We've got to get that right. 16 penalties in a game isn't good enough. But the contest that we have against Western Park, they're always interesting. Like most teams in the league have got a bigger pack than us, but we try to build ours around speed and aggression. And we do tend to get that dominance at times. But it's going to be a tough game against such a quality side. We beat them at home last year, lost them away. They finished above us. So there'll be a little bit of that redemption as well. But I feel as the group as it is, we're in a pretty good spot. We've obviously lost Tom for 3 weeks with his suspension. We've got a couple of guys that might have picked up injuries, but we're fairly comfortable with the guys that we're bringing in as well. So it's another really tough contest, and without putting pressure on ourselves, one of our aims was to try and be dominant at home. So, off reflection of what we did last week, it's more encouraging to see where we can move forward rather than worrying about what we did, maybe a season ago.
And it's the first double header as well, because Vikings are playing at 12 as well. So
yeah,
it'll be a good day for rugby down there. So.
Yeah, and I mean, apparently we're going to get some all right weather. I don't know. That's what they're talking about. But yeah, the Vikings will be playing Bournemouth. One of the clubs that we used to play back in the National League, National 3. So yeah, it'll be a double header. They're kicking off at 12, and then we're at 2 o'clock. So there'll be all sorts of rugby for everyone on Saturday, which will be fantastic. And I mean, yourself, if you get down to the games, I think they talked about there being 600-700 down there last week, which is insane for the first league game of the season. But I guess it shows there's invested interest in what we're doing as a sporting organisation.
That's brilliant. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers.